Let's be friends.
Have you not?
Here we go.
And greetings, everyone. Welcome back to the Ambassador Wing and episode 10, I believe, of the Tarantino podcast. We are nearing the end of this series. We hope you all have enjoyed your time here with us. Today, wherever time you're watching this, we're going to be discussing a first-time watch for me and my good friend. You know him, you love him. If you don't, what's wrong with you, Mr. Ace Mowick? This will be a first-time watch reaction to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood by, of course, Mr. Quentin Tarantino. And as always, if you enjoyed the discussion, if you've enjoyed this review series, make sure you smash that like button. Share this out with all your friends who are fans or diehard fans, whatever level of fan you are of Mr. Quentin Tarantino. Share this out with them. Tell them, hey, go over to this channel, The Ambassador Wing, because they do some really kick-ass discussions on directors, movies, particularly Tarantino, and give them a watch. Check it out. And if you're not, then you're just a square. And if you know, you know. But as I said, today we are discussing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This is Tarantino's 10th movie. And sad to say, he says he's got one more in him and then he's hanging it up. And I cannot lie, I'm kind of bummed. But today we're not here to talk about how bummed we are that one of our favorite directors is possibly retiring from the directing biz. We're here to talk about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And quite frankly, like I said, this is a first time watch for me and Ace both. I'm not going to lie to you, Ace. I didn't know how I was going to feel about this movie. I loved this movie. Really solid.
Yeah, I feel the same. I didn't get to watch it until this week because here in South Carolina we got hit with a couple days of snow, which I've not seen. I've not seen snow in since I moved to down south, so it's been a good 6 years or maybe 7 or something like that. But hey, I used the time to my advantage. A couple days off from work, but yeah, I wasn't sure how this movie was gonna be. I heard about how I had the whole Bruce Lee scene and thought, oh, okay, and then watched
played by Mike Moe. Yeah,
and I thought, wow, this movie's great. Yeah, I think it's possibly one of. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. You got the floor.
I think it's like watching the movie completely through. It struck me as Tarantino like really reeling himself in terms of like a lot of the typical Tarantino isms that we've come to know him for in terms of like extreme close-ups on like say doorknobs turning and things like that. There's some minor moments that towards the beginning, like on a drink or something, but a lot of the things we associate him with, like conversations around a dinner table or lunch table or a diner, aren't really present in this movie. So this movie seems like it's him being much more subtle and less in your face with paying homage to movies of the past because it's set in the past. So, and I really commend it for that.
Yeah, February of 1969, which much to me and Ace's chagrin, we did not realize the significance of that year and particularly that time period because a rather notorious event took place in February and March of 1969, and we will get into that and everything as we get along into the discussion. But yeah, this is almost in the same vein as Inglourious Bastards. It's a bit of an altered history, in a manner of speaking. So, involving a notorious family and their ringleader. Granted, we don't actually ever see him, I think, but maybe once or twice. And also a rather notorious, well, now notorious, but at the time very famous director, one Roman Polanski. And this is truly a Once Upon a Time in Hollywood type of story because you have Leo DiCaprio was Rick Dalton, the lead. You've got Brad Pitt as Cliff Booth, also the other lead. And I gotta say, Brad Pitt has aged like fine wine. He's just gotten better as an actor, and he did a great job in this movie. He really did, and so did Leo DiCaprio. Ace, your thoughts?
Yeah, basically the same sentiment. Like, if there was an actor I'd go gay for, it'd probably be Brad Pitt. Just kidding. I know it's such a dumb thing to comment, but yeah, they had great chemistry together, and like I could believe them as being not only longtime colleagues but friends as well. And how Leo is this aging actor who's past the best years and role of his life, that's kind of struggling to find work, not only for himself but for his friend, so he can at least have him as his stuntman so that he can get work. And even though he can't get him on some stunt roles on whatever projects he's on, he does give him work to do. Like, well, I need a ride in here and whatnot because, like, well, I lost my driver's license for this reason, or like maybe having him like do some maintenance on his house or things like that. I think that's a pal there. And
yes.
And at no point do you might think, oh, maybe the stuntman Cliff is gonna see like I'm relegated to a maintenance man or a driver, this, that, and the other. But no, he takes it in stride. Like he has no complaints. He takes it like a champ, and that just goes to show like how deep their friendship goes.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't just a now somewhat fading leading man and his stuntman. They are that, but they are also very good, close friends, almost like brothers in a way. And the great thing that Tarantino does with these two is he really builds a sense of their relationship, because through the dialogue and the way they behave with one another, they understand that the both of them have faults, they have shortcomings, but you know what? They're still there for each other. They're still back up one another, and they're not afraid to say the hard things to one another. But at the end of the day, it doesn't diminish their friendship. And it's a rare thing indeed to find a friend like that or have a friend like that in your life. I am lucky enough, I can say I have 2 or 3 of them. And I imagine we all have those type of friends in our lives and everything, whether it's male or female, either way.
Absolutely.
So, the thing, one of the other aspects of Cliff and Rick's relationship that I really enjoyed was during the time when they're on the set for the Western that Rick is playing the villain in, and we've got another cameo appearance by one of our both of our favorites, another alum of Tarantino's movies, Mr. Kurt Russell. And Kurt is always a win. Not only does he make an on-screen appearance, but he's also the narrator. And you think Samuel Jackson's a good narrator. For this movie, Kurt Russell was the perfect fit as the narrator. Granted, it wasn't narrated throughout. It was narration when necessary or appropriate, which I think narration in film, it can be a double-edged sword. Sometimes it can benefit a movie. Other times it can drag it down. In this case, where Tarantino used it was right. So.
Just trying to gather my thought. Like I do agree. Like the narration's not overused, but I just felt like maybe it could have slightly been toned down. But I understand the reason. Like he's basically telling the time of events, because for those that are familiar with pop culture or like just history of the late '60s, you might know what events are coming for, to fruition. So he's just basically giving you a quick little crash course, and it comes close to like maybe being overdone, but just clocked under time where it doesn't overstay its welcome, I would say. And I give points for like you said, Kurt Russell does a great narration. It wasn't like Hateful Eight where there's a narration of a scene that like briefly by Tarantino himself. And I think, okay, I don't see any audible or that I noticed any physical cameo of Tarantino. So I think, oh, that's good. He's not including
This
himself in this
was
movie.
Yeah, this actually, Hateful Eight in this movie, he has no on-screen cameo, best that I can recall anyway. The last time he had an on-screen cameo was actually back in Planet Terror, which was actually directed by his best friend Robert Rodriguez.
That's true.
So that was the last time he had an on-screen cameo. The
Mm.
last couple of movies that he did, or anything like I said, was Hateful Eight and this one. He did not have an on-screen cameo, which, as you said, he's reining himself in. He's getting away from some of his things that we know him for. He has really, as we've done this series of reviews, we've really seen the evolution and the refinement of Tarantino as both a writer and a director. And at this point, I'd say, well, we did say at the time Hateful Eight was him at his peak. This was really him at his peak. I mean, this movie came out in 2019. This movie is not that old, really. But he's really refined his craft and his abilities. Go ahead, Ace.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I thought it was such a great movie, and that I even told my mom, who likes watching movies that might have Pitt or DiCaprio. I said, "Hey, you could watch them." I mean, she's not a big fan of language, but I noticed, there's less of the excessively vulgar language. It's there, but it's not anywhere near to the level as like, say, Pulp Fiction or Kill Bill or Hateful Eight. I mean, not one N-word slur in this movie.
No.
And there's violence in the later scene we're going to get to, but it's just within that scene, and it's nowhere near to any of the prior levels, and so it functions as it should.
Yeah. Well, and the other great thing is this movie almost has the pacing. If this analogy holds together or holds true, it almost has the pacing of a storybook. Hence the title, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It does have the pacing, and it does have it has the tone of a storybook. It has a very relaxed pace, hence the length of it, because it's just like 20 minutes under 3 hours. But it doesn't overstay that last minute, because like I said, it comes in at 2 hours and 40 minutes. But you're not looking at your clock, you're not looking away, you're not bored, you're always engaged with this. Because Tarantino's telling a story from old Hollywood of yesteryear, in a manner speaking. The 1969, the last year of the 60s. You're kind of at the height of the hippie movement, the anti-war movement. There is a couple of passing mentions of the Vietnam War. Actually, there is one scene, and I didn't realize because I saw it as a GIF. Was actually the scene and everything when they're talking about the movie 15 Fists of McCluskey, when Rick Dalton is playing a playing a character in a war movie, and he's fighting Nazis, and he busts through a window with a flamethrower and torches a bunch of Nazis. The same flamethrower that he would use towards the end of the actual movie.
Which is a nice setup and a great payoff.
Yeah, because they actually show him training with the flamethrower, and he's like, "It's a mite hot, ain't it?" And the guy's like, Rick, it's a flamethrower. It's gonna be." He's like, fair enough. So, and it's just a nice little comedic nod there, but he's like, "Yeah, I guess it's a flamethrower. It would be hot." Just saying. Let me ask you, Ace, in terms of the when Rick is on the set for the Western and he convinces Kurt Russell's character to allow Cliff to be his stuntman, or a stuntman and everything for another part, and then unfortunately, Cliff gets in the fight with the actor who played a stand-in for Bruce Lee. Obviously, what did you think of the actor? Do you think he did a good representation or impersonation of Bruce Lee, or do you think it was a bit too? Was it a bit too over? Was it too overdone?
I thought it was actually a very great uh, take on Bruce Lee. Like
Hmm.
I like Bruce Lee movies, and I've seen some of his interviews. He's got the voice down and his manner of
Hmm.
speech to talking. Whether or not he's got those subtle mannerisms, it's hard for me to say. But I thought he did it pretty well. And
Yeah.
the thing I don't care for about that scene is because I've heard, and I pick really it does show in the movie how Tarantino is apparently not very fond of Bruce Lee. I can't say
Mm.
the degree he's not fond of or why, because Bruce Lee had a huge impact on kung fu movies and Chinese cinema
Hmm.
as a whole. Because if it wasn't for the
Hmm.
kung fu craze, we might not have gotten like that explosion of Chinese films coming to the United States, like with Jackie Chan and all those
Hmm.
films that Tarantino's so fond of.
Mm.
So you got to respect
Yeah.
Bruce Lee for that. So I just don't care for how he made it seem like, oh, Bruce Lee was all showboating and he could get taken down, because no, Bruce Lee, like, yeah, his movies, it's exaggerated for the movies, like these big, like flashy fights and whatnot. He developed his own fighting style so that it was more quick
Jujitsu.
takedowns. Yeah,
Hmm.
like his own. Well, that wasn't jujitsu itself for that, but it's something
Oh,
akin to that because he grew
mm.
up in Hong Kong. If fighting in
Yeah.
street gangs, he had to learn how to strike quick, get them down on the ground, and so forth.
Yeah, because he was very slight of build, obviously, and the actor who played him, Mike Mo did a good job.
Mm-hmm.
As you mentioned, and everything. I've watched some interviews with Bruce Lee myself, and the mannerisms with his hands and his face and so on. And he did wear those very large sunglasses that did cover the majority of his face. Now, Grant, he was in his Kato costume, and they did refer to him as Kato, not so much as
Yeah.
Bruce, but except for like one or two people did call him Bruce. And
Pitt's character.
I,
Yeah.
yeah, Cliff
Cliff.
Booth and everything. Yeah.
I was gonna say Chris.
Um, well, and here's the interesting thing about Cliff Booth's character. There's a scene, it's a flashback scene to where he was on a boat with his, well, now late wife, and she's not a very pleasant woman to be around. Let's just be candid here. She's a, well, I'll just say it, she's a right bitch.
Mm-hmm.
And
Reminds me of my last
it's
date.
I haven't been on a date. Well, I'm married, so I don't have to worry about that sort of thing anymore. I have a date for life.
Mm.
Anyway, the interesting backstory on Cliff is the fact that he supposedly killed his wife. Now we see him holding that dart gun or air gun or whatever it is,
I think I
and
thought it was a spear gun, but I could be wrong.
yeah, but the thing was, it wasn't loaded as far as I could tell. So
True.
what exactly? We don't exactly know she died, but there's this shadow hanging over that because everybody believes that Cliff killed his wife. But we don't have any empirical definitive proof that he in fact did. But he now has this reputation. Bruce, he killed his wife and got away with it. And when he threw Bruce, or well, the actor playing Bruce and everything, into that woman, the Kurt Russell's character's wife's car, and she pitched a holy fit because she doesn't like Cliff precisely because she believes that he did kill his wife. When
And Kurt
he,
Russell's wife in the movie is played by Zoe Bell. For all those who've been watching
yeah,
this stream.
I remember that as well. Yeah, and I gotta say it once again, Zoe Bell, she brings a lot of fire and energy to anytime she's on screen, and she's a real great to see and everything. Now that we know what she looks like and who she is,
Yeah, if she's not killing,
Death Proof.
if she's not killing Kurt Russell in Death Proof, she's chewing him out as his wife. Well, that might be a fate worse than death.
Yeah, because to quote Shakespeare, "I will speak daggers but use none." I think she really takes that to heart. And if you know that quote, and if you don't, I'll just give it to you. It's from Hamlet, when Hamlet's talking to himself and everything about, and when he's about to go. But that's another discussion for another time.
As the saying goes, hell hath no fury like a woman's scorn.
Yeah, indeed. I do want to transition to Margot. She is an absolute delight in this. I know some people have an issue with Margot Robbie because of some of her, but honestly, I could give a rat's ass in hell because her as Sharon Tate in this movie,
superb.
Who was a real life person, anything, who was actually was married to at one time, I will say it as it is, the alleged and notorious director Roman Polanski, who fled the country because he was going to most likely be convicted for SA on a minor. And he has not come back. He's not come back to the States and all this time. As far as I can't remember if he's actually still alive or not, if he's passed on, but either way. But I can't remember who they actually. Let me look it up. Hang on 1 second. Because I've got the IMDb right.
And I just want to quickly say, Margot Robbie, like, beautiful actress, and I like how she's stunning without being made overtly sexual. Like the probably closest she was is like when she's wearing that black top with the very mini white skirt when she's going to the matinee. I think that is how you balance class with the sexiness.
Well, but here's the thing too: she was wearing those very tall boots. So
that is about the go-go boots.
Yeah, the go-go boots. She was. You have to remember, this was 1969. Women did dress somewhat provocatively, but in her case, she still had a degree of modesty, but she wanted to look nice. She was going out to pick up a book for her husband, Roman Polanski. The actor who played him was Raphael, but I cannot for the life of me pronounce his last name, so I'm not going to even try. But another scene or anything where Polanski and Tate go to a party at the rather renowned in its heyday Playboy Mansion. Now, of course, there was no on-screen cameo or actor portraying Mr. Hefner, but you have another big star of Hollywood back in the day, Mr. Steve McQueen, played by none other than I had it right here. 1 second. By Damian Lewis. Now, for those you may be familiar with that name, but can't quite place him, he was actually in Dreamcatcher, which was written by Stephen King. And he actually played a dual role of his character and his character being infected by an alien. And he was actually, I think he was the highlight of Dreamcatcher. So if you want to see another piece of Damian Lewis's work, go check out Dreamcatcher. I know a lot of people don't anything are the books and the movies and miniseries that are based on Stephen King's work are hit and miss. Dreamcatcher hit it right. So also on YouTube, you can find him. He's done The Guardian has a YouTube channel. The channel is called Guardian Culture. He actually they did a series of these called Shakespeare Solos, and he does a portion of Mark Anthony's friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears speech from Julius Caesar, and he absolutely, as Mark Antony, he absolutely nailed it. Nailed it. So, but I'm rambling. Him as Steve McQueen, he nailed that part in spades. Absolutely. Your thoughts on the Playboy Mansion? What do you think?
I thought it was a good sequence because, like I like the '60s aesthetic as a whole, like not just the late, but like also like the early to mid, and like also into the '70s. So I like period pieces where it takes place in that time, where it's the transitioning from old Hollywood into new Hollywood and so forth. And the music in this entire movie is great. But in the Playboy Mansion scene, like I just saw that Steve McQueen bit, and I thought this kind of makes me wants to go out and watch a Steve McQueen movie like The Great Escape or something like that, or like some of his '70s work. And then I see these little cameos of like character cameos of Michelle Phillips and Mama Cass of the Mamas and Papas. For those of you,
when
I thought that was cool.
When Sharon said mom, when she said Cass, I was like, Mama Cass. And the reason I knew that reference is thanks to Mother Ambassador, actually. Little bit of an aside, and then we'll get back to the movie. Back in the day when Father Ambassador was still alive and everything, the church that we were a part of at the time would have ladies' nights for the ladies of the church, and the husbands would put on different programs and so on for them. This particular program, the guys dressed up in drag and did a bit of a show. They didn't do anything indecent. Now, this is Strader's own lips, and I believe her because I've seen the pictures.
This should be rich.
Because my father was kind of a heavyset guy, and they did the women helped the guys get themselves all did up, and my father all did up in drag had a resemblance to Mama Cass.
That's all right. Imagine if he dressed as Dr. Frankenfurter.
No, none of the men did that because that would have been inappropriate for the church. But
I'm just saying, imagine that.
No, my dad couldn't have done it. He was too heavy set. He would have not looked right. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, yeah, my father, as he rests in peace, bore a resemblance to Mama Cass from the Mamas and the
Papas. Oh God.
So,
I love that.
Yeah, and kind of shifting gears a little bit. Rick Dalton on the set of this Western where he's playing the bad guy, and you playing the villain to be more accurate. And this is a really cool dynamic because you've got an actor who's playing a character, and that character is also an actor himself. You don't see that very often in a movie because generally it's an actor playing a character and he's just playing the character. But in this case, it's an actor playing an actor.
Yeah.
And what DiCaprio does with the character of Rick Dalton, who's playing this villain, he has a real hard time keeping his lines together. He's like, "Can we break?" And he goes back to his trailer. And he's chewing and cussing his ass out. He's like, "You had 8 whiskey sours the night before. You said you're going to have 3. You're freaking drunk." He's like, "Now you're going to get your shit together, and you're going to go back and you're going to nail this damn part. You're going to nail those lines." And just a few minutes before, just a little bit before that, he's sitting somewhere on the back lot of the set, and that you see this young actress sitting there, this young kid, literally. And she's sitting there reading a book, and he's like, "Do you mind if I sit with you?" And she's like, "Yeah, that's fine. I don't care." and they start talking about the books that they're reading and everything. He's talking about a Western that he's reading, like one of those nickel Westerns that they put out back in the day. And they have this really cool, those pulp Westerns that they put out. And he's describing it, and she's like, you know what? Just from what you've told me, that sounds like a really good read. And then later on, he's playing the villain part, and she's the hostage. And we get another cameo by, of course, Luke Perry, which I haven't seen Luke Perry in a role, at least as far as I can recall, since The Fifth Element. One of my all-time favorite sci-fi movies from the 90s. Absolutely love that stinking movie. He has one cameo scene at the beginning of the movie, and then you never see him again. So, Ace, your thoughts on that sequence?
Well, I enjoy the sequence because, like you said, DiCaprio's playing an actor playing a character, or to quote Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder, "I'm a dude's playing another dude."
You gotta love RDJ.
I don't, but that's beside the point.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
What I like about like that in sequence of him getting in character, like when he's like first he's in makeup and the directors talk about giving him a big long mustache, like longer than this stupid one I got, and then giving him hippie hair, like almost a hippie type coke, but still fits of the time. He's like, but we don't want people not recognize me. He's like, yeah, they're not. Well, they're not going to be. You're not going to be you. You're going to be a character. And he's, because he's still thinking like in the past tense of like the old way of how he did movies, like characters were more recognizable as the actors. So they were more sellable. They weren't playing characters necessarily or looking like characters that you couldn't necessarily recognize. And we see like as he's reading the book, he relates the character because he has this sort of fear that like this has happened to actual actors in Hollywood. Like they had their time in the spotlight, but then like they take a bad role or their shows ended or something, and then they struggle to find work, and they're afraid of becoming an old has-been or whatnot, and it cuts DiCaprio deep. And so we see him like in performing the scene against the other actor, and he's doing quite competent well until he's like line, and then he does it once, like, okay, pick up, and then he does a second time. He gets so frustrated. Like you said, he goes and chews himself out in the trailer, and then he really psychs himself up, goes back and gives a dynamite performance where he actually gives the director suggestion, like, what if I do this as well? And then he kind of ad-libs something like just by action. The director's like, that was great. Where did that come from? I was like, I don't know. I just ad-lib improv. And he's just like so satisfied with himself. Like, because even this little girl who like knows nothing about his prior work, like she earlier on says like, oh, I try to stay in character by being referred to by my character names. Like, this is a potential child prodigy. And she even says like to DiCaprio, like, that was some of the best acting I've seen. And he's like, I'm not an old has-been. Like, you can kind of see on his face, like, maybe I still got some performances left I can give that can be enjoyed by people.
Yeah, and, it's interesting. At the beginning of the movie, him and Cliff are meeting another cameo, Al Pacino, his character Marvin Schwartz, and there's a little bit of a mispronunciation with his character because Rick refers to him as Marvin Schwartz, and he's like, no, it's just Schwartz. And he's like, okay. He's like, because you often hear the Schwartz name with the T on the end. But in this case, it's Marvin Schwartz. And word gets back to Marvin because he's watching a rerun of a show that Rick was on and everything called FBI, which was an actual real life show back in the day. And he's like, he calls one of his friends who's in the movie business and everything. And he's like, are you watching the channel, this channel, and it's FBI and Rick Dalton's in it? And the guy's like, no. He's like, change the channel. check it out. And it actually, because they were having a conversation early on in the movie, and Schwartz is telling him about some stuff that he could do for him, and everything to actually, get him some more work. Where you go overseas, you work with this overseas director, an Italian director, kind of like what Clint Eastwood did back in the day when he was working with Sergio Leone on the Man with No Name movies, and those roles really, in a way, revitalized Clint Eastwood's career in a big way. And after that, he's never really stopped being in movies or making movies per se. I mean, he's in his 90s, and he's still doing movies or anything. I mean, he's getting up in years, obviously, but you see a parallel there with Rick Dalton's character and Clint Eastwood, which I think we all, as film buffs and everything, and growing up, we loved him in Dirty Harry, and we loved him in the Sergio Leone movies and the other westerns that he did in the
Josie
70s and
Wales.
80s, and yeah, Outlaw Josie Wales, Unforgiven, all of those. Clint Eastwood is one of those actor directors that we all grew up with, and we still love him to this day. I mean, he did Gran Torino, one of his more remarkable roles in his later years. Million Dollar Baby with Hilary Swank, nailed it with that role. And you see a parallel, like I was saying, everything with Rick Dalton's character and with Clint Eastwood. And I think that was deliberate on Tarantino's part. Ace, what do you think?
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking. Like how, like I mentioned, how it's this sort of transitional period, and like the old time actor from when we did westerns in the 50s and 60s, it was kind of like clean cut. You knew this was the good guy, this was the bad guy. And he even says in the movie, like, I don't like them Italian westerns, those spaghetti westerns. But we see that he still goes and does it. And he doesn't just do one and done. He does three, and they're all like these other Sergio, not Sergio Leone, Sergio Corbucci, who was a real spaghetti western director. Did some great ones. I've seen two of them, Django and The Great Silence. I highly recommend them both. But get ready for a down ending. And then, like, not only does he do those three, he does like essentially a car chase, like a exploitation type movie, but in Italy, and he manages to get work for his buddy as well in those movies.
Cliff, yeah, because there's a car jump over a bridge, and that was Cliff driving the car, obviously. And you see Cliff, obviously there's probably a stunt driver playing Cliff's part for some of those scenes, obviously, or at least for that one particular scene. But it's so cool to see a stunt jump like that done right, and it's it reminds you of the original Smokey and the Bandit and everything, and with of course Burt Reynolds. Love that guy. Can't say enough about him. But yeah, that whole part and everything, he goes overseas, he does those movies, he actually meets his wife, Francesca, everything, a Italian movie starlet, everything, very attractive woman. I'm gonna look up, see who played her, because I can't recall the actress who played her, but I've obviously got it right here. So
I love Italian women.
Yeah, Lorenza Izio. Yeah, very lovely woman. So, but while Rick is doing his thing, Cliff goes on a little bit of an adventure of his own, and I think this is where we can kind of transition to the real life history and everything that this movie, the events and everything, and the people that this movie takes place around. Because a certain rather notorious film ranch is mentioned in this film, and that, of course, is the Spawn Ranch. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the late 60s and 70s crime history of the period, Spawn Ranch was the headquarters of, Charles Manson and the Manson family. And unbeknownst to Cliff, he picks up one of the hippies that would eventually become a member of the Manson family. And we have a cameo appearance by they're another alum of Tarantino's movies, Bruce Dern, who plays George Spawn, the owner of Spawn Ranch. We also have a cameo appearance by Dakota Fanning as the one of the heads of the family. And we have a couple of brief cameos, one by a more modestly covered Sydney Sweeney, and also the daughter of a actor that we both, I think, have a lot of appreciation for, Harley Quinn Smith, daughter of course, Mr. Kevin Smith and his wife.
Appreciation for his movies, up to and including Clerks 2. Everything after, I've not seen, so I can't say.
I haven't seen either, but I've heard lots of good things about Clerks 3, and I actually heard good things about Jay and Silent Bob's reboot. That was actually, from what I heard, hysterical as all get out.
I've heard the opposite about Clerks 3. I've not really heard anything about Jay and Silent Bob movie 2.
Or reboot? Yeah.
Yeah. So I can't say.
But, digging into the real life history, Tarantino decides to kind of explore a rather interesting era or situation in 1960s Hollywood, because obviously Spawn Film Ranch was out in California. That was where, in fact, the Manson family and Charles Manson did a lot of their work. Their illegal activities. They're extremely illegal and very violent activities. And you have another cameo appearance by Austin Butler of course, Elvis and Dune Part 2 fame, he played Feyd-Rautha Harkonnen, one of the nephews of the Baron Harkonnen, played by, of course, Stellan Skarsgård. And I gotta admit, once I heard the name Spawn Film Ranch, I was like, oh crap, Tarantino's going there. So, Ace, open the floor to you.
Well, I can't remember if this happened on the Spawn Ranch scene or before it, but when the hippie girls mentioned Charlie, I thought, oh, it's going to get into they're referring to Charles Manson, and I didn't think that it would lead into like the actual Manson family. So I thought, oh, and then we actually get to the ranch, and I like how when we get to the ranch, it kind of plays into some of those Western cliches. Like you see the lone dog just coming across the screen, and the lone stranger coming into town, and he's just looking around. It's kind of a band. There's people like sticking their heads out from the saloon or things like that. I just thought, oh, that's a nice touch to Quentin.
Well, it also had somewhat of a horror movie vibe as well.
Yes.
Because this movie, or this particular sequence, a lot of tension gets built. Because you're transitioning back to the house where all the girls are at, and where George Spawn is at, obviously, in the back room, and you've got the head girl there, played by Dakota Fanning. Squeaky, I believe, was her handle.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I can't remember the name of the one girl that brought her there. I think it was Flower Child, maybe.
Something like that.
Who brought Cliff to the ranch. And of course, we see a couple that's going on a trail ride with a pair of the members of the family, and you can probably imagine what happened to them. Unfortunately,
probably
they probably met a very grisly end, because let's be honest here, the Manson family, they were very, very extreme. Do your anything, for those of you that aren't familiar, do some digging online. You'll find out just how dangerous the Manson family was in their time before Charles went to prison and died there. Because every parole hearing he was up for, it got denied because they realized just how dangerous how dangerous he was, and how dangerous his lieutenants were.
And it feeds my belief that despite my admiration of aspects of hippie culture, like the music, for example, a lot of them weren't just peace-loving pot smokers. A lot of them were useless, hypocritical a-holes.
And
so you could call them dirty hippies.
And some of them were violent, egomaniacal a-holes, in particular with the Manson family. And as with Inglourious Bastards, there is a change of events in this movie because obviously Cliff is a rather persistent individual, and he's like, I want to see George. And Squeaky's like, okay, fine. He's in the back room, but I'll tell you right now, he's blind. He can't see worth a damn, and I screwed his brains out just a few hours ago, so he's sleeping right now. And of all the things you would not imagine Dakota Fanning to ever say in a movie, well, that's one of them. But, I will say this for Dakota Fanning. She has matured from a young child actress into a very capable and very talented adult actress. And this role right here is a testament to that. So, kudos off to Miss Dakota Fanning. You have evolved rather nicely, young lady, as an actress. And we appreciate your work. So, obviously, Cliff butts heads with one of the heavies, one of the guys there at the ranch after he goes to see George, and they talk with one another for a few minutes. And, Bruce Dern is the old curmudgeon. He plays the old curmudgeon rather well, as we know from, Hateful Eight. And he does well in this part as well, as he often does and everything. It doesn't last but maybe 5 minutes or so. But then Cliff comes out, walks out the front door, and everyone has seemingly disappeared. But as he gets closer to Rick's car, well, they've stuck a knife in his front tire. He's like, well, you all want me to leave, but you stick a knife in my tire. How the hell is that? How the hell does that figure? And you see this big, blonde, shirtless,
string bean
blockhead. He's like, did you do this? He's like, and Cliff pulls out the spare tire, and he's like, well, this is my boss's car. It's not my car. So he's like, you know what? You're going to change the tire. And the guy's like, well, F you. And he's like,
appropriate response he gives to the hippie.
Yeah, he knocks the ever living crap out of Clem. I actually caught the name and everything when one of the other hippies gets on the horse and goes to track down Tex and the other girl that have taken the couple on the trail ride that will lead to a, like I said, rather grisly end. And Cliff proceeds to beat the ever loving snot out of Clem, and he does it
bloody snot, mind you.
Yeah, busts his nose, busts his face, and by the time Tex gets back to the ranch, well, Cliff is long gone. And, of course, shortly thereafter, Rick and Cliff leave for Italy, go overseas. So, any other thoughts that you wanted to add in regards to the Spawn Ranch sequence, Ace?
Not really. I just thinking like myself, like Cliff is a smart guy. Like that, I thought to myself, why are they being so dismissive? He's a dude like saying he just wants to basically say hi to his friend. They're like, no, this, that, and the other, and they're such tools. But I get it. Like they just it's like, oh, this is an outsider. They're a cult basically. But he's literally just saying hi to a pal and whatnot, and they're trying to give him the brush. I think, oh, come on, just. No need for that, but whatever. And, they sabotage his car and he has the last laugh, beats the crap out of the guy who does and makes him change the tire. I think appropriate response. And They give him hell about, try to bring Tex back. Think, hey, you sabotage his car. That's what you get. I'm sure, like, they would probably be all surprised if, a cop rightly put a nightstick up the rear end for calling them pigs. Like, well, you antagonize, you poke the bear, you get bit.
Yeah, you do. And of course, we get the narration from, of course, Mr. Kurt Russell, about Cliff and Rick's time overseas. He meets his wife Francesca, a very young, lovely young woman, and they come back to the States. They come back to Rick's house, who is actually he lives on a private drive. His house is adjacent to Roman Polanski's house. Anything very nice looking mansion. I will say this: I liked Rick's house, and I liked the Polanski house, and I liked the setup for the Playboy Mansion. Obviously, this was not, as I understand it, the main mansion. I could be wrong, but it was one of the other mansions that Hefner had back in the day. The set design and the costuming for this movie for the late 60s, it was all on point. They did Tarantino did his research, got the right people to come in, bring this era to life.
Great music once again.
Because while it's he did a absolutely bang up job. But of course, as Tarantino is known to do, he has a little plot element from earlier in the movie, a acid dipped cigarette that Cliff finally decides to go ahead. He takes his dog, Brittany, or I think that's the dog's name, if I remember correctly. Brandy out for a walk, and he smokes the acid dipped cigarette. And well, it has its intended effect, obviously, which leads, of course, to the reintroduction of Tex and 3 of the other Manson children. And they just so happen to come up to Rick Dalton's house. And Rick, of course, is in the pool in back. His wife's asleep in the bedroom, and Cliff has brought back Brandy and is fixing Brandy's dinner. And the quartet of Manson family members are about to do something very, very bad. But Rick runs them off, and they back down the road. And then one of the girls is like, "Do y'all know who that was?" And they're like, "No, I used to watch this show." And Tex remembers him as well as the actor and everything from the show Outlaw, Bounty Outlaw. And he's like, "I had an Outlaw Bounty lunchbox and everything. It was one of my favorites." And then, of course, they decide, well, they're going to be the piggies that they kill.
They were originally there to kill the Polanski residents.
Mm-hmm. But instead, they go after the Dalton residents, and, well, it doesn't end exactly as they intended to. And, you know, this is the one sequence of the movie where you have that gruesome Tarantino violence that we're all so accustomed to so much. So, Ace, I'm gonna let you give your thoughts on this.
Well, like I stated before, it's very much dialed down from what you expect, but still functions in terms of what you would expect in Tarantino, and also like what happens in that. I like the setup. Like, obviously, Cliff is still tripping on acid, or the acid cigarette, I should say, and he's basically, caught with his pants down, so to speak, if you get my reference. But he's preparing dinner for his dog. His buddy's in the back. His buddy's wife is asleep in the room. And he's just at a total disadvantage because like there's 3 people, like 2 came in through the front, 1 came through the back. So he's high. He wasn't expecting this, and he's outnumbered. And all 3 of them got knives, and one of them has a gun as well. And then he realizes, oh, wait a minute. I remember you. You're the guy from the ranch. And then you think, oh, it's going to happen to these guys instead. No. And nope. He literally like makes a snapping sound with his mouth, or
he whistles. Yeah.
And his dog, starts mauling Tex with a gun.
Mm-hmm. And goes after his hand, goes after his wrist, goes after his junk, goes for the groin like a good dog should. Because I think Brittany is a Brandy is a pit bull.
Yep.
If I recognize the breed correctly. Very sweet dog with Cliff and with Rick and whatnot. With anybody else,
it's a well-trained dog.
Very well-trained dog. Very, very, very well-trained dog. Tex gets it first, and then the other Manson girl,
the Yoko Ono look-alike.
Yeah, the one with the dark hair and the very pale complexion. Yeah. I almost recognize that actress, but unless I'm mistaken, she was in the film adaptation of Silent Hill with Sean Bean. It might be the same actress. I could be entirely wrong. Not a particularly good adaptation of the Silent Hill video game, from what I understand of it. But another discussion for another time. But yeah, she runs into Rick. She gets her face smashed in by Cliff and
throws a can of dog food
at her and busts her face up. Blinds her. She can't see a thing. She has the gun by just sheer dumb luck, but she's got it pointing straight up in the air, and she's not hitting anything, obviously, because she doesn't realize that the gun she's holding it straight up in the air. She stumbles into the pool, scares the ever-living crap out of Rick, who's having a drink and listening to some music, ruins his portable radio, which kind of sucks, because I really like that radio. Worthless, dirty hippie.
Yep.
And he's like, what the hell's going on here? And he goes into his I guess it's his storage shed or whatever, and his tool shed. And what does he come out with? Mr. Torchy, the flamethrower.
No tool shed's complete without one.
You know what? In this case, I cannot disagree. And he proceeds to torch Little Miss. A strong breeze comes up and she blows away Manson hippie girl. And she's a crispy critter by the time he's done with her.
And like I said, she's struck me as a Yoko Ono lookalike. So just the thought of Yoko Ono getting blazed with a flamethrower just brings warm feelings to my vacant black heart.
Well, for anybody that's a Beatles fan, I think that's somewhat true to varying degrees. I don't think I necessarily want any harm to come to Yoko Ono, considering her age now.
I think any fan of music and good taste in general.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that.
What?
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. But of course, Cliff and Brandy, and to a degree, Mrs. Dalton take care of the Manson trio, minus one who actually says, "Oh, I forgot my knife," and then she just takes off in the car.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, screw this. I don't want to kill nobody. I just want to smoke weed and get high.
Mm-hmm. She was the smart one of the dirty hippies.
Yeah. But the question is, did she go back to Charlie or did she just run? That's the real question. Because real life history, what happens? That group of hippies breaks into the Polanski residence and unfortunately kills Miss Sharon Tate and the others that are there at the
And
time.
her unborn child.
And her unborn child. Yeah. And I think that's actually the murder that took place where they scrawled in blood on the wall, "Death to the pigs." I could be wrong, but I believe that's the one. So,
sounds right.
in a way, Tarantino did do a rewrite on history because the killers got killed themselves, and potentially because Cliff went to Spawn Ranch, he may have led the police straight to the whole damn Manson family and caused the whole Manson family to get hauled off to jail.
Revenge fantasy.
Revenge fantasy, because while you may not like Roman Polanski for various reasons, anything, because he is allegedly, very strongly allegedly, essayed a young actress and fled the country because of said charges. We will never know the truth or anything, but circumstances lead to believe that, well, if he ran, it's possible he did do it, but we are not here to pass judgment on Roman Polanski. We're here to discuss the movie where he is a character in Tarantino's film. Granted, a real life person, but character just the same. And of course, this leads to I can't remember the name of the guy, but Emil Hirsch or anything plays a another actor and everything that is a friend of the Polanskis, and of course was originally involved with Sharon Tate. Jay Sebring. Emil Hirsch plays Jay Sebring, who's I think at the time was Sharon Tate's best friend or whatever the case may be. And thankfully, they all survive, and he comes down to the gate, and he's like, "Aren't you Rick Dalton?" And he's like, "Yes, yes, I am." He's like, "What the heck happened?" And Rick's like, "Well, these damn dirty hippies broke into my house." And of course, Sharon Tate comes over the speaker and she's like, honey, what's going on? She's like, well, he's like, I'm talking to Rick Dalton down here. She's like, who? She's like, Rick Dalton? She's like, yeah. And they have a very nice exchange. So, any thoughts on that, Ace?
Well, what I love about that is she's like, "Oh, hi, neighbor." Like she knew he was a neighbor, and that's kind of a payoff to something that Rick had said earlier in the movies. Like, I got Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate that's living next door to me. If I could probably be back in good parts if I was just invited to one pool party, but he gets invited over after a bad circumstance, and I'd like to think myself, I assume you might have as well, that he kind of got what he wanted.
Yeah.
Like he started a good friendship with them, being neighbors, and he was maybe able to get into a couple roles with Polanski or maybe some good connections, and he was able to have a good career because, like, oh yeah, I just done 4 movies over in Italy, and I did this one here in the States, and so he's like getting notoriety. You know, he made some more connections, so now he's going to be back on top again, or at least back and getting good roles again.
Yeah, because there's actually a conversation before this when they come back from overseas, and he's like, "Look, I've made a good bit of money, but unfortunately, some of that's been eaten up and so on." But he's like, "I can't really keep you on anymore, Cliff." And Cliff's like, "Hey, I know, I get it, I understand. You got to take care of you and your wife. You gotta keep your place." He's like, "I get it," but Cliff does save the day in a big way in that whole situation. And as you said, it's very likely now that Rick is going to have maybe a resurgence as an actor again. And maybe Cliff and him don't have to end their association. Maybe Cliff can be, here's the thing. If you're not a stunt man, you can be a consultant. And he has a lot of experience as a stuntman. He could be a stunt consultant. He could work behind the scenes on doing stunts and making them safe and making them look good and all that stuff. Because while he does get stabbed in the leg and everything, he's like, Rick, I'm not gonna die. He's like, it's gonna take more than a he's not gonna take more than a knife in the hip to keep me down. He's like, I'll have a limp maybe. But he's like, I'm not gonna die. Just come tomorrow. Bring bagels. A country boy, a seemingly country boy like Cliff Booth, and he's like, bring bagels. So, any thoughts on that?
I'm trying to think. On that ending, no, I got nothing. But I just kind of want to say the one thing I love about Cliff's character is like he's always like having a drink or having a smoke or something. And like when Rick asks him, "Hey, can you like if you got nothing else to do the rest of the day, can you go by my house?" And I think my antenna got knocked over. So can you check it out for me? He's like, "Yeah, I can do that." And he goes to the house, he gets on a tool belt, and one of the little pockets on his first can of beer that he brings up with him on the roof. I just thought that's a nice little characterization. The guy's always having to drink it because, a lot of guys on the job would drink beer and whatnot, handymen and whatnot. And I've done that just doing like things around the house or little projects like building an entertainment center or something like that.
Yeah. Well, and there is a kind of a little cliche with Brad Pitt. Any movie he's in, he always seems to be eating or snacking or whatever. Because if you've watched either one or all three of the Ocean's movies with him and George Clooney, every single one of those movies, his character Rusty is eating or drinking or snacking or something. Every movie.
Fair point.
So, I think the only movie that doesn't take place in is Inglourious Bastards with his character Aldo Raines.
Interesting.
I could be wrong, but I think that's the only movie where he doesn't do that. So, I'll have
to. I think I remember him like eating a sandwich when the bear Jew comes out ready to club the Nazi.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think
he says like point it on this map.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, in terms of all the Tarantino movies we've done thus far, where would you rank this one?
I wasn't sure where it was going to be, or like when I was starting the movie, but at the end I thought this knocked it up to number one. This knocked off Hateful Eight from that spot, so I got to put it at number one for me.
Fair enough. I'd have to say, for me at least, Pulp Fiction's still my number one pick. That's always going to be my number one in terms of Tarantino, in terms of Quentin's movies. This one I'm going to put at number 4, but between Pulp Fiction and this, because I consider it one movie, number 3 is Kill Bill, and number 2 is Jackie Brown.
Fair enough.
But number 5 is Hateful Eight, most definitely. So, but that's my 2 cents. So, as always, folks, we hope you all have enjoyed this review. As always, leave your comments down below with anything me and Ace discussed or anything we might have missed. Leave your comments. Where does this rank in terms of Tarantino's movies? If you have a listing for his. Me and Ace are considering, we haven't made a definitive decision as of yet, but we might do a bonus episode, do one more just to kind of round out the set. And we might be looking at doing the discussion on Tarantino's first movie he ever wrote, which of course would be True Romance. So, but we'll get back to you all of that, of course. Make sure you follow me and Ace on our socials, him on Instagram, me on X and Instagram, and we'll keep you in the loop on that. As always, you all have a great day wherever you're at. And as I like to say when we close out, be ambassadorial. Be genuine, be sincere, be yourself, but never take yourself too seriously. If you do all that, you will always have a place here at the Ambassadorial Wing. We'll see y'all next time.
Let's be friends.
I have you not.